Alternate picking is the alternation between downstrokes and upstrokes, and it allows you to do some pretty incredible things on the guitar. Check it out. Anyone can learn to play like this, seriously. It seems crazy, but if you learn the proper mechanics and learn how to practice them properly, you can play like this. It doesn't have to be this genre or style, but you can do incredible things on the guitar with alternate picking. You just need to learn the fundamental techniques, and that's where I come in. Welcome to week 1, the 4 fundamentals of alternate picking. Now, it's important that you listen to each explanation of each fundamental that I go through before you try it. If you are trying to work out the technique while I'm explaining it, you will for sure miss something. So listen to it all the way through and then give it a try during the pause and practice sections. There are 4 fundamentals of alternate picking. We're going to go through each of them one by one, and we're going to conduct little exercises in order to solidify each of the fundamental techniques. So let's start with number 1, anchoring. Anchoring is when you rest some part of your picking hand on the body of the guitar while you play. This allows you to feel where you're at while you're playing. It helps you to know where your pick is in relation to the other strings surrounding the string you're playing. That's called spatial awareness. If your hand is floating in the air without an anchor, your spatial awareness becomes unhinged. But if you have an anchor point, your hand will stay grounded against the plane of the strings. The plane of the strings being the flat surface of the strings right here. But before we jump in, grab your guitar and we're going to practice together. But remember, watch before you try. Let's do some alternate picking on the G string to practice our anchoring. So place your pick on the G string, and then to anchor, place your palm on the strings above the target string being the G string. Something really useful that I also do is I anchor the side of my thumb. I anchor the side of my thumb on the strings above the target string as well as my palm. This keeps my picking hand flat against the plane of the strings while I play. It guides me in a straight line. I want to stay along the plane of the strings because the number one thing that throws off alternate picking is the hand moving away from the strings with every pick stroke. That bouncing motion is what causes your anchoring and spatial awareness to become compromised and that feeling of out of control. So lightly anchor your palm and the side of your thumb, if you want, on the strings above the G string, and alternate pick on the G string as you maintain your anchor point. It should look like this. So now I'm going to play one string at a time as I stay anchored, starting with the low E. But something important to notice here is that when I play the low E string, my palm is actually anchored on the body of the guitar, not on the strings. It's only when I start to move to the strings below that my anchor points shift from the body to the strings, like this. And when I start from the high E string, you'll see that my anchor shifts from the strings to the body. So what I want you to do is go ahead and do 4 strokes on each string, and remember to maintain your anchor point as you move from string to string so that you stay along the plane of the strings. You shouldn't be rocking like this with every string transition. Keep your palm and side of the thumb grounded. can either pick with your whole entire arm, or you can pick with your wrist. It takes a lot more stamina and muscle to use the whole entire arm when you pick. So we want to use wrist movement like this. Make sure that you keep your wrist relaxed and that your movement is just occurring at the wrist joints. Don't lock out your wrist and move your entire forearm. Movement should occur solely at the wrist. Go ahead and alternate pick on the G string and focus on anchoring, but also now you're going to focus on relaxed wrist movement as well. So we know it's important to move with the wrist. How you move the wrist is equally important. There's two types of ways to move the wrist: a key turn, fishing pull. We want to use this fishing pull straight up and down movement while alternate picking. The reason being, if you use the key turn movement, your pick will drift away from the strings with every pick stroke, and that will compromise your anchor point. See how my anchor point is coming up? This is horrible because the further away your pick drifts from the strings, the more time it takes to come back. But if you use the fishing pull movement, this straight up and down movement, your pick will stay against the plane of the strings, which will allow you to transition from string to string smoothly and quickly. So I want you to do 4 strokes on each string again and keep the fishing pull movement consistent as you transition from string to string. Don't default into this huge key turning movement. It should look like this. Just as we talked about before, the further your pick drifts away from the strings, the more spatial awareness you lose. Wrist movement allows you to execute smaller and more precise movements, which will allow you to stay closer to the plane of the string. So the theme here is small and precise. So I want you to do 4 strokes on each string again, but make the movements as small as possible. It should look like this. The more that you tense up, the more restricted your movements become. The movements required for alternate picking are small and precise. The more relaxed our muscles are, the easier it will be to stay in the desired ranges of motion. Here's what I mean by that. The more stiff your muscles become, the more likely it is for the pick to get stuck or for you to overcompensate and force a movement, which will cause you to drift out of the desired ranges of motion. For the moment, we're going to alternate pick just on the G string, and then the main point of this exercise is to crank up the speed a few notches and focus on staying relaxed as you play, like this. Don't lock your wrist out as you play. That's a common mistake when people start speeding up. Keep your wrist even more relaxed as you increase the speed. Go ahead. Pick overhang refers to the amount of pick sticking out. The more that the pick sticks out, the more surface area there is that needs to pass through the plane of the string, like that. So what ends up happening when you have a lot of pick sticking out is the pick dips in between the strings, and every time you transition to a new string, you have to bring the pick out and over. And this is another thing that causes that bouncing. We want to stay flat against the plane of the strings, straight up and down, not in and out. Another point is that the less pick sticking out, the less surface area there is to pass through each string. This means you will encounter less resistance in your alternate picking. This is why you see a lot of lead guitar players using small and pointy picks. Less surface area, less resistance. So to practice minimal pick overhang, I want you to play the same 4 notes on each string, open strings of course. Stay against the plane of the strings with minimal pick overhang. Don't let a large portion of the pick dip down in between the strings every time you transition. It should look like this. Another way to decrease resistance as you alternate pick is to angle your pick inward like this. So here's flat, here's inward. Take a look, if my pick is flat against the string, that's a lot of surface area that needs to pass through the string. That flat plane against the flat plane equals resistance. But if I angle my pick slightly inward like this, that's less surface area that needs to pass through the string. And that decreases my resistance. So don't angle in too much and don't keep it flat. Angling in too much will change the tone. It'll give you a scrapey sound. If you want that, then you can experiment with that. But I just want you to angle it in slightly. And I want you to play just on the G string to see if you can get the pick from one side to the other like this as smoothly as possible. Go ahead. If you go back to the beginning of the video and watch those examples of alternate picking that I gave, you'll see that each of those players executes perfectly on the 4 fundamentals. They're anchoring, they're using wrist movement, they're staying relaxed, and they have minimal pick overhang. So go ahead and check that out. Now the most effective way to practice the 4 fundamentals is to apply them to a real life scenario. So our real life scenario is going to be a really cool triplet run. I'm going to show you a video clip of that run, and you'll see the notation that's embedded below the video. Now in the notation below, I've given a recommended fingering. So above each note, for example, it starts on the 10th fret. And above the 10, it will say first, which means first finger. Your first finger being your index finger, and your 4th finger being your pinky. So first, second, third, 4th. And I think that fingering works really well, for me at least. It just goes really smoothly. So give that fingering a try and let me know how it goes. After having memorized it, what you're going to do is you're going to take each of the 4 fundamentals and you're going to place your attention on each of the 4 fundamentals as you go through the exercise. And a great way to do this is to go through the exercise 5 to 10 times, focusing on just the first fundamental, anchoring. Then go through it another 5 to 10 times and just focus on wrist movement. Then go through it another 5 to 10 times, just focus on staying relaxed. Another 5 to 10 times, focus on pick overhang. It's the quality of your focus that will determine the quality of the outcome, of how good you get on the guitar. So if you know what to focus on, and now we do the 4 fundamentals, and if your focus is of good quality, then you will see yourself break through barriers and play scenarios that you never thought were possible. Seriously, when I started focusing one at a time on these fundamentals and really paying attention to them, I started blasting through my walls. Even if you feel like you already have a good, solid handle on these 4 fundamentals, I promise if something's still not going right, if there's still a wall you can't quite get over, if you focus more intently on these 4 fundamentals while you're playing, it will bring something to light. It'll bring something to light that you didn't know that you were doing, and you will fix that. Thanks for being here with me. If you need anything, let me know, reach out, and we'll see you in the next video.